and welcome to Dave's Think Tank. Today I want to talk about drop targets. The Flash Gordon has a lot of drop targets. There's a line of 3 here on the top level, another line of 4 on the lower level, and this is interesting, 3 drop targets in a row as an entry to the would-beast's lair. You have to hit them down 1, 2, 3 in a row to get all the way to the back of his lair. But the one I really want to look at today is this single drop target on the top level. It blocks the ball from returning to the shooter lane, and it's been giving me a lot of problems. From discussions I've seen online, a lot of people seem to have trouble with this one. It tends to pop up and then fall right back down again. Now, in order to understand why this happens and what to do about it, we need to know a bit about how a regular drop target is supposed to work. So here are a couple of regular drop targets from beneath the playfield. One from the front, one from behind. Now the first thing you notice when you take a look at these, there's a spring attached to each drop target so that when it's hit from above, the spring pulls down on the drop target. It's pulling against this metal bar here so that each target is pulled down and into place. To push the targets back into place, there's this big electromagnet which pulls this metal bar, shoving all 4 back into place. On the back, you have these switches so that as each target is hit, it comes down, activates the switch, and the machine knows when all 3 are down. The other important thing to know about drop targets is this. Each target has a catch near the top. When the target is lifted into place, this catch comes over a metal rim and holds the target above the playfield against the pull of the spring. Now this also points out that the spring has a secondary and less obvious function. In addition to pulling the target down, it also pulls it forward to ensure it hooks onto the metal rim. Otherwise, it would just fall back down. So what's going wrong with our single drop target? The problem here is simply bad design. It's difficult to get a good view of the single drop target under the playfield, but here's a diagram I found online. It looks to me like they've compromised just about everything to make this as small as possible so it could fit into the smallest space possible on a playfield. They removed the metal from the near side of the enclosure, but then they didn't have anywhere for the metal bar that the spring attaches to. So someone said, hey, here's a metal bar we can use instead. Now, there are drop target assemblies that use this link bar, but it has to be attached much farther out from the base of the target. As it is with the spring attached this close to the pivot, the spring is practically pulling on the top and bottom of the target. Effectively useless. So it can't effectively pull the target down, but it's even worse at pulling it forward. As it is, at this angle, there's almost no forward pull by the spring. So now we can see why there's so much trouble with this target. The only thing pulling the target down is gravity, and there's practically nothing at all pulling the target's catch into place. The first thing I tried to fix this was shortening the spring by clipping a few coils off the end. Under the assumption that the design was sound, I assumed a little fine-tuning was all it needed. This worked a bit, but stopped when I made other fairly minor changes. I added a decal to the target, and this seemed to affect the function for some reason. This just highlights how sensitive the whole mechanism was to fairly minor adjustments. The second thing I tried was recommended from a website. They suggested moving the spring from the bar, which was obviously a bad place for it, to this hole in the side of the enclosure. This made sense as it meant the spring was no longer pulling on two ends of the same target post and was pulling on a slightly larger forward angle to catch the target on the rim. Unfortunately, my results with this were mixed. The spring has to bend around the coil to get to this hole, and that decreased its effectiveness considerably. Plus, the forward angle still was not great. I found it worked less than half the time. The solution I finally came up with was to use two springs, one to pull down and one to pull forward. I added a small second spring attached to the target in the same place as the first, with the other end attached to a hole conveniently placed right about here in the side of the assembly. When I first tested this, it turned out the new spring pulled slightly upward, easily preventing the original spring from pulling down. So I replaced the original spring with a really strong spring, and that did the trick. I've had this solution in place for a couple of weeks now, and so far there have been no issues. So, let's play a game.
How pathetic.